Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, only NFL podcast where one of the hosts thinks a turnover is what you do when you want a treat. That's Lenny. He rolls over like a champ. I'm Mina Kimes. Domonique never rolls over for me. Domonique Foxworth, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. How's Lenny doing with Nino? Is he good?
Doing great. Crushing it. Except for when he barks while Nina's trying to sleep, and that's not great. But he doesn't know what he's doing. Yes. Domonique Foxworth, of course, of the Domonique Foxworth Show, wherever you get your pods of this show. You can see me on that show. You can see us both in Las Vegas for a live podcast on Thursday, February 8th. You can get tickets at bit.ly/MinaFox. All right, Domonique, we are not here to talk about that. We are here to recap, pick winners and woofs from the divisional round. Very exciting divisional round. I like that we get a couple days to process everything. We got through about 48 hours of Josh Allen discourse. And what I love about you and doing this show is when we each sent our winners and woofs, neither of us mentioned Josh Allen.
Of course not. There's nothing to talk about there.
He played well. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm glad. So during the season, sometimes I do Monday Get Up when Dan or RC or somebody is traveling. I'm next man up. And I normally appreciate the Monday Get Ups because they're so easy because you're coming off of Sunday games and it's like just a smorgasbord of interesting topics. And I was not jealous at all this Monday when I don't watch it a ton when I'm not on it, but it was so ridiculous that I was getting texts. People like, you got to get up. It's going crazy. So I thought I avoided it, but I had to talk about it today. And somehow I'm still making us talk about it now. Ignore that. Let's get on to the winners.
It's really incredible how the order of games determines. It makes sense, but it really determines the magnitude of debate because if the Niners had played at night, the Brock Purdy discourse would have dwarfed the Josh Allen discourse. Yeah. But both of those things can be discussed. But we're going to start with two spells. We're going to start with the winner. I give myself the winner here. And obviously choosing from the Kansas City Chiefs. So what I went with Domonique for this after rewatching this game, I was tempted to do Chris Jones, who ended this game ultimately and tried to end it twice. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs offense. And my winner is Patrick Mahomes' teammate. Because Mahomes was amazing, unsurprisingly. I think we are probably, I do think we're taking that for granted now, but we don't have to get into that. But we talk about how amazing Patrick Mahomes is in terms of his arm talent, some of the throws he makes, the fact that he doesn't get sacked, his ability to evade pressure, the way he sees the field, his decision-making, all of that. But what really struck me in this game was the fact that after everything he's gone through this season, the drops, the penalties, the screwed up routes, all of it, he still trusted his receivers to beat man coverage. He still threw to MPS versus cover one in big moments. Could not be me. And I don't know if you caught this, but I had a conversation with Mitch Schwartz. I did that again. About what can fix the Chiefs offense. And he said something in that podcast, which you guys can check out, that I've been thinking about ever since, when we were talking about it. And he said, what Patrick needs to do is not give up. He has to believe that in these moments, because they're all he's got. And he has to continue playing within the structure. Because at moments it looked like he didn't trust them, right? You'd see him double clutching. You'd see him being like, nope. And it was very relatable. Maybe the most relatable Patrick Mahomes has been this season at points, especially at the midpoint towards the end, when he clearly didn't trust his receivers. But in this game, he did. And he was rewarded for it big time, Domonique.
Yeah, I often get and I've talked to you about this before. I get you're the ex-athlete, so explain to me what it's like or explain to me what it's thinking. And most of the time, I try to be honest when there's something I can relate to. Yeah, but when we were doing Tom Brady discourse, people were like, what's it like to be? I don't know. You think I know what Tom Brady's brain is like? Or you think I know what it feels like to be considered one of the greatest of all time? Like, imagine the distance between my life and his life is far enough that I can't guess. And I feel that same way about Patrick Mahomes in the course of a game, making decisions about whether he can trust somebody or not. Because when you said he still trusts his receivers, my thing is, of course you did. You don't have no choice. And I guess your point is like, yeah, there were times through the course of the season where I guess through a specific play, you would see a pass that maybe he would normally throw that he chose not to throw it. But it's not like he's a good runner in certain situations, but it's not like he has another option. So Patrick Mahomes is in the enviable position of getting Super Bowl championships early in his career and already being in the GOAT conversation. So unless he's capable of forcing to Travis Kelce, you got to give them a chance. And he, unlike Josh Allen, has the pelts on the wall that when he loses a Super Bowl because there's no O-line, that don't hang on him the way that it does. Or had he
Mm,
thrown these passes and MVS dropped it, the narrative is already written. Miko Hartman fumbled through the end zone. Like the narrative of this season
yeah.
is already written. Once again, Patrick Mahomes' offensive teammates let him down. It was the O-line's injuries in the Super Bowl, and now it's the receivers. So I'm sure that Patrick Mahomes doesn't think that way. But as someone, as a member of the media, I did not feel like the stakes were high for Patrick Mahomes or that he should have felt a ton of pressure about trust in MVS. You're a receiver in man coverage. The rules are designed for you to get over open. You're not even that open, but I'm going to throw you the damn ball and you better catch it. I can't do else.
The slot fade
Oh.
down the right sideline. Beautiful pass.
Mm-hmm.
Dropped it in the bucket. I fully expected him to drop that. You watching that when that ball left his hand, what percentage of you thought MVS would actually catch that football?
Yeah, I think that I thought there was I thought there was probably a 45% chance that MVS catches that ball. It's probably higher than that in actuality, but my personal faith was like, this is a coin toss, a little worse than a coin toss,
I
right?
really believe it takes a lot of mental strength. So I actually saw a stat that kind of blew my mind, which is he had 3 deep balls this game, the most in a game he's had this season, which that's not that many. That's not that
It's not.
many. That speaks to how bad they've been this season. Kelce as well, man. Like he has not been nearly as bad this season, but he has had some drops, and I think there's been
Mm-hmm.
moments where he doesn't beat man the way he did
Used
before.
to.
But
Right.
watching him this game, I know he took week 18 off, which I think is notable. I was thinking like, oh, I have that same feeling of inevitability watching Travis Kelce. Um, the way he finds the voids in zone, the way he will get open for Patrick if the play breaks down. I am now not worried in the postseason. And we'll see what happens next week. The Ravens are a very different defense. We'll obviously break that down in detail. But it again, it's still not like a group of world beaters,
Right.
but I cannot believe how quickly my concern has dissipated in the pass catchers. And this brings up your Woof. Here's the craziest part. The takeaway from this game, one of the takeaways is the Chiefs pass catchers were better than the Bills. Who would have I mean, they didn't have Gabe Davis, obviously, who's been, who knows what version of him you'll get. But, the drops from the Bills tight ends as well. Like the Cook, like who would have thought that would be the story in this particular matchup?
It's definitely not what I assumed. And the you having confidence in them is or I don't know if you had confidence in them, but you not feeling as concerned to them might be a bit of a reach because
Yeah.
they weren't great in the freezing weather game. The offense was tough in the red zone, but I think the Travis Kelce point is, I think if we use Madden ratings, he's an 85 on this team, but he's a 75 on any other team because I think he's lost a lot of the athleticism and ability that would make him separate. But what he has is whatever brain link that him and Patrick Mahomes have. It makes him more valuable to Patrick Mahomes than anyone else, and that makes him more dangerous in the red zone, which is
Yeah.
where it all matters. And yeah, my Wolf, If you're ready for that,
I'm ready
since
for it.
you set it up, Stefon Diggs, and I am not trying to scapegoat him at this moment for this game, but he since the was it, I guess it was the OC change, he's been non-existent, and it's not just that one play where he doesn't catch the ball where that's a
Yeah.
legendary play. That's a play that runs on NFL highlights for the next 30 years if he catches it and they win the game. Not only does that play happen, but he just didn't feel he fumbled early in the game. He didn't feel like he had an impact in the game at all. And it's felt that way for several weeks.
Yeah. So since week 10, Stephon Diggs has actually been eighth in target share. So it's not like he's been blanked out of this offense. However, despite that, he is ranked 50th in yards per route run. Some of that is usage because he was running fewer deep routes, but 49th in catch rate, which really jumps out to me. Watching him, Domonique, did you feel like he's lost a step, or do you think he's just not as reliable as he was before, or do you think he's just old? I mean, he's 31. That like
Yeah.
happened really quickly.
My feeling is it was none of the above. It felt more like they wanted to do different things with the offense. And I know his targets are still up, and
They're different though.
yeah, they're different, and they may not be as geared towards what he does best. And I imagine that there is some like psychological impact on when Joe Brady came in and the offense changed to a low risk proposition, and I think that probably impacted it some. But I think Josh Allen or I think Stephon Diggs can still be the player that he was if they go back to playing the way that they did, or if he plays somewhere else where they use him in the ways that he is most effective. But this ain't it.
Yeah, well, that brings me to, I guess, where we can leave things with the Bills, or where we can wrap this conversation with them, since we will talk about the Chiefs in a lot more detail later this week, which is next season. So there's some debate now about the Bills' window and the state of things. They're pretty significantly over the cap. They can clear a lot of space by restructuring some deals, notably Josh Allen's, no brainer. But this roster is pretty flawed, and I think that it ended up being their undoing, even though they really overcame it a lot. Mike Sando at The Athletic wrote a great column about the contrast between the Chiefs' defense and how young they were, and the Bills' defense. And Bills' defense is the second oldest in the NFL. Again, injuries play into all of this, but to me, like when you look at them in the Chiefs, and Mike touched on some of this, when you pay your quarterback, you got to do two things. You got to hit on draft picks, duh. And then when you do spend money, it has to be well spent. So when you look at the Chiefs cap table, so the draft picks part, McDuffie, awesome. Trent McDuffie, George Karloftis took a huge leap this year. He was really good in this game too. He's a great player up front. And then their three highest played defensive players are Justin Reed, Charles Omenihu, and Chris Jones, all of whom are very good players. I mentioned Chris Jones kind of being the closer earlier. Omenihu also had a really big play at the end. On the flip side, the Bills have drafted a lot of defensive players, and they're fine. Like, they're not bad players. They've found some starters, but they're not as good. They haven't found superstars. And then Domonique, like Von Miller, that's where they spent all the money, and that is looking real bad right now. So I guess moving forward, my question for you is, defensively, what can be done? Like, is it just a matter of like you need to turn some of these players into stars or hit on picks? Like, is there any position you would prioritize? Because they're pretty up against it monetarily.
Yeah, I was surprised at how well they played, particularly in the secondary for this season through
Yeah.
injuries. And I think that that's what they need to do is continue to overachieve there. And when you don't have like incredible game breakers, I think you have to obviously overcompensate in other ways, and that's scheme and they've never been a complicated defensive unit, but they've added some wrinkles since their injuries. They're going to need to add a lot more wrinkles. You look around the league as defenses that overperform, you normally see high volatility style, which is a lot of blitzing. That's not what McDermott is going to turn to. I don't think that doesn't seem to be his style, but he's going to have to add more of that in and also generally keep the opposing quarterback off balance.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's
I
a
mean, you
tough
have
spot.
Josh Allen, you're always going to be fine. But I
Yeah.
think, fixing that, adding to the defense, and then figuring out the Stefon Diggs question. And, is he your wide receiver one? Do you need to find the wide? Dalton Kincaid was really good this year, but it does feel like they need wide receiver help, especially Gabe Davis is a free agent. He's so inconsistent. They got something in Shakir, but and then I think from a coordinator perspective, do you want to stick with Brady? Because that's a very different identity on offense. A lot to be discussed, a lot to be debated. We will get into it all off season. I just feel bad for Bills fans too, because obviously for a litany of reasons that they don't need to rehash there. But I think the reason I feel the worst for them, Domonique, is like it would be one thing if they were losing to the Chiefs in like very clear ways. Like if we were like, well, they clearly just need this. But it's not that. And like Allen played a great game. He made a couple mistakes. Everybody in this team made a couple mistakes in this one. Sometimes
if it was a clear reason, or if they were getting beat, like
right,
they played well enough in this game to at the very least go into overtime.
100%.
Then there's the 13-point or 13-second game where you argue they played well enough to win. And then you can go through the Scott Norwood field goals and their 4 Super Bowl losses. It does feel like there's a curse. I don't know what y'all did up there in Buffalo, but y'all better figure that out and right all your wrongs, because this feels supernatural.
You happen to be in the NFL at a time where the greatest quarterback in the history of the sport, in my opinion, is playing. Like, that sucks. Okay, moving on. And he might lose, by the way, because another quarterback is playing really freaking well right now. We're going to get to him. But first, we're going to talk Bucs Lions. I gave you the winner for this. Who is your winner from Bucs Lions from the Lions side?
Brad Holmes, the general manager.
Yeah.
And he's been getting a lot of attention for his elevator yells and also his story to make it from rent-a-car salesman. I guess you're not a rent-a-car salesman. Rent-a-car attendant, whatever, to general manager of the Detroit Lions. And he took a lot of criticism last year, or at least the Lions took criticism last year for drafting an inside linebacker and Jahmyr Gibbs and a running back early in the draft. At least one of those picks has turned out to be a very effective and smart move this time of year. But the Aiden Hutchinson hit, Penei Sewell hit, the Jared Goff trade, you managed to get somebody to give you 2 first-round picks for a franchise quarterback, which is an impressive coup. With that pick, they got Jameson Williams, or with one of those picks, they got Jameson Williams, who he's been effective or been impactful later in the season, though he hasn't risen to the level that we all expected. But this has just been impressive. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Sutton in the offseason are good additions. It does feel like it doesn't feel like a fluke. It feels like a well-constructed roster that was very thoughtfully planned. And even with some misses, because you're going to miss, they hit enough in the draft. Amon-Ra St. Brown, like he's done well. And it seemed watching the game this weekend that it showed that there was not like although Ben Johnson deserves credit, it doesn't feel like this is like all scheme. They got players. Laporte, I didn't even mention Laporte. Like they've gotten players, young, impressive players.
Brian Branch is arguably the best player in the secondary. Those
Yeah.
slot blitzes. To that end, Aaron Glenn. I think like when you consider talent versus production, he really deserves a ton of credit. I mean the coaching staff there is excellent, top to bottom. But yeah, Holmes. I mean, yeah, you just point to so many picks and decisions over the last few years that have worked out. Ryan and I have an inside joke whenever people talk about this draft, no one ever mentions Jack Campbell, but Jahmyr Gibbs is amazing. And I think like the story of this game for me, I mean, so many of the players you mentioned did really impressive things, including Goff. I thought, in the second half, some really nice drives, some drives too. Like we always talk about how Jared Goff is incredible, kept clean, incredible on in-breakers, but he threw some out-breaking throws that I was like, damn, dude, like those are the Jared Goff. dealing. But for me, offensively, story of the game was two players, Jahmyr Gibbs and Penei Sewell. So Gibbs, I feel like leads the league in making players look dumb right now. Maybe Lamar. I don't know. Which player would you rather face in the open?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Lamar has given up on making people look dumb as a pastime.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It felt like his first couple of years, he's like, all right, I'm gonna make everybody look stupid. Now it seems a lot more calculated. Jahmyr Gibbs is still in that prove yourself stage where he's making people look silly.
What do you think was going through Antoine Whitfield Jr.'s head when he squared him up? Because
Gosh.
there are so many plays this year where you can screenshot a DB who looks like when they draw an outline around a dead person on the
Chalk
asphalt,
outline,
like
yes, yes. It's
you could do
bad.
that to safeties, corners. It's so mean. It's so mean. And
Yes.
like I feel like Whitfield Jr. is probably in his late 20s now. He's like 27. So many guys look like they should retire on the spot after trying to tackle Jahmyr Gibbs. He is a truly special player, but I will say I was as riveted by him as I was by Penei Sewell in this game. I'm not trying to be a football hipster about it. That dude, when he pulls and they when on runs to the left a lot, you do have pulling action with him. He kind of looks like Trent Williams in terms of like
Yeah.
the size and the speed and the way he moves. And let me tell you, that is going to be a problem for the San Francisco 49ers, because he sends
Yeah.
dudes flying. And yeah, anyways, I totally agree with you about Holmes though. Like it's just top to bottom. It's hard to, I think, identify someone in the NFL who deserves executive of the year more than him right now.
Yeah, the Penei Sewell stuff got me excited. I was a big Penei Sewell head back in the draft when the
That's right. I
conversation
remember.
was Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase. And I probably was wrong and also right at the same time. Because the impact that he has on his team is incredible. And that athleticism on the edge is going to be a problem for a team that struggles with edge runs to start with. And
Mm.
a team that's defense is predicated on pass rush that hasn't been all that effective this year. It ain't gonna get any more effective against Penei Sewell.
Nope. What a player. What a player he is. Okay, so I got the Woof in this one. This is actually hard, with all the underdogs who lost, you're kind of like, you did great. You got here, it's not it's like I really think the Bucs had a pretty remarkable season, all things
Yeah.
considered. I went pretty granular, and this is kind of like I think one of the reasons why they lost this game. It was kind of interesting because in the last round they beat Jalen Hurts because he couldn't handle the blitz. I thought the Bucs offense really struggled against the blitz in this one, in some pretty key moments. Now they beat it with that screen touchdown to Rachaad White, notably. But I just want to, I think you can kind of tell the story of the game in some ways with how the two quarterbacks performed against the blitz. Jared Goff, they blitzed the hell out of him, unsurprisingly. And he was only pressured 20% of the time when they blitzed him, which has been the case with the Lions all year. It's play design, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown working over the middle of the field, it's Jared Goff, it's the offensive line. Whereas Baker Mayfield, when the Lions blitzed him, he was pressured 62% of the time. He was sacked 4 times, threw an interception. So I felt like every time they sent a DB, Aaron Glenn sent a DB, it worked. Again, something to keep an eye on in the next game. And credit to Glenn, I think, for his feel for calling pressures against some of the Bucs looks. But as always, with every blitz, a different person is at fault. It's never one. Some of it was Baker, some of it's the offensive line, some of it is the play calling, whatever. But and I think the Bucs got outcoached in this one as well, and credit to Aaron Glenn on the other side of that.
Yeah, I've been having to eat my words on this Lions team for the past couple of weeks because at one point I said on my podcast that they were not a serious outfit, and that was because I was very angry at the fact that their defensive line couldn't get any pressure. And like I was like, all right, at some point, Aaron Glenn is going to have to turn up the blitzing, and I didn't think their secondary was going to be able to hold up. I was dead wrong about the secondary being able to hold up completely because they haven't been perfect, they haven't been great, but they're holding up, and the offensive support that they received in this game, I think, helped a lot. But they are still in a precarious situation in that they can't get a pass rush without blitzing, and that's going to put you in some tough spots and make your offense or make your defense a little bit more volatile. And they weren't perfect in this game, but you're right. Given what they have, I was impressed, and the offensive support allowed them to like bend and not break.
Much more significant challenge
Mm,
awaits, I think. Wrapping up quickly, I do think the Bucs probably bring Baker back. Makes sense
yeah,
given where they are, how he played, the resources at their disposal. Um, it felt like in this one, they still have really good players. I think edge remains a little bit of a question mark with them, and corner, again, injuries and stuff. So I imagine they'll prioritize that, but they're going to be competitive next year, and like really credit. Like really good season for them, all things considered. So
they should
Todd
be.
Bowles.
Yeah, great job, Top Bowls, in that division. They might win it again next year. They might be dealing with Bill Belichick in that division too, which may make it harder or not. I don't know.
All right, let's take a break, come back, and settle once and for all whether Brock Purdy's elite. Just kidding.
Oh
We're not
yeah,
going to talk about
easy.
that. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words: Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer: hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. Okay, I did give you the Niners as a winner here.
Dre Greenlaw,
Yeah,
my
dude.
winner.
Yeah. Although
Two interceptions, and don't you start complaining about that man not going down and
I
sliding
just
or
want to
taking a
know
knee.
what you were literally what it looked like in your household watching him when he picked off.
Oh, I was so happy, and I was going, go, run, 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 run. I know
No,
what you're
you weren't.
supposed to do.
No, you
I know
weren't.
what you're supposed to do.
Stop it.
Score,
Lateral,
score.
lateral, lateral.
Yes, yes, let's go. Pitch that thing. Pitch it.
Sicko.
And
Sicko.
both of his interceptions were um he was trying to score. Like he seemed like,
Yeah.
sometimes people get an interception and they trying to get what they can get and get down. He was trying to run both of those back, and I wanted him to so badly. It was fun.
The Niners linebackers are
Yeah.
insane. I there was like they struggled against the run, which again we're gonna get into that. That's but the entire team, frankly. But there was, a series where Fred Warner just did alien things, like 3 plays in a row in this game
Yeah.
early.
I guess I should have said linebackers instead of just Dre Greenlaw
No,
because
Greenlaw made the big plays. He deserves
they
credit.
they are the saving grace of this defense, and they make up for so many other issues that this defense has. But yeah, they aren't as good on defense as they've been in recent years, and it's because they're designed to lean on their front, and their front's not dominating the way that you expect.
Can I send a message to all of sports media if I'm not actually don't know how I'm gonna come down on these games, but if we get Niners Ravens, the favorites, the 1 seeds in the Super Bowl, we don't have to do Purdy Lamar. We don't have
Oh,
to do it. We as a nation, as a sports media complex or whatever, should be doing Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw versus Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. That, my
ooh,
friends,
I
is
love
a
it.
debate. That is
Yeah,
a
I love it.
legitimately good debate. Let's have
Yes,
it. Please,
let's do it.
please. Let's do it.
Let's do it. You and me, we can do it on both of our podcasts because I promise you, on the shows on TV that make all the money,
No,
they gonna yell
no,
about them
no, we're
quarterbacks.
gonna do it. We're gonna do it. I'm gonna in the morning calls. We're gonna say, "But how about these linebackers? Let's argue. Because I don't know, man. It's close. It's
It's
close.
very
They're
close.
asked to do very different things as well. I would be like, if they switch places, could they both execute I think they could actually. The both defenses
Yeah,
would still be really, really good. But the way they're used is different. They're different styles of players. I think probably I would go with the Ravens this year just
Yeah.
because of the run and some of the tackling, but because they've been so good. But
It's tough, man. I think the Greenlaw and Warner get, I think, a bit more love generally. I feel like we've been being told that Fred Warner was the best linebacker in football more than we have about Roquan, because Roquan was in Chicago where no one cared and they weren't very good. But Roquan has now been on a good team for a couple of years, and it's changing the way that we see him. And Patrick Queen started his career in a way that people are like, oh, they missed on that one. And then they added Roquan and allowed. So I think that they are probably behind. But in isolation, if you just look at these seasons without all of that context, I think I go with Queen and Smith over Warner and Greenlaw. And Warner has the hair advantage too. Something about linebackers with hair hanging out their helmet makes people think they're better.
he stands out a little bit. He's married to a former Bachelor contestant, so he's got
Oh, really?
the fame
Oh,
angle
yeah.
too. I mean, Roquan and Warner were both first team All Pros correctly, right? Yeah, this is, man. It's
The
a
way
close
you're
debate.
smiling right now is.
I just love it. I just love it. I love watching both of these
I,
players, these two position groups, so
I,
much.
I forget how much you love football because the
You know what I
way you're
don't love?
smiling at linebacker talk is
Can,
amazing
can,
to me.
can I? I'm not trying to be like do too much. I feel like I probably do a little bit too much meta commentary.
Mhm.
But the thing I hate about the Purdy thing, the debate, because
Yeah.
we're not even. I actually, by the way, like, first I'll start with a blanket statement. I really don't think this Purdy game means anything. The Packers game that we were actually talking about. I'll talk about the Packers side in a second, because my only takeaway is like Purdy is not good in the rain, but it's not going to rain, so okay. I don't. The Super Bowl's in Vegas. If they get there
Yeah.
next week, is not going to rain. So like, all right. I don't like what like fine. That might matter in the future, but as far as like football now, whatever. I think. But here's what I'll say. I think what's so about the Brock Purdy discourse right now is it's just a bunch of people talking around each other and having different debates on their own
Yeah.
terms. And like, I saw some backlash to my colleague Ryan Clark's comments because he said Purdy's not as good as the other quarterbacks, and then I think Richard Sherman jumped in and some others and said, well, why are we holding a second-year quarterback to the same standards? Well, you said he was MVP candidate, and some people were holding him, were saying when he was playing well, he deserved to be grouped in that. But it all comes down to the same thing, which is what is the actual debate here? Are we talking
Yeah.
about whether he's a top 5 quarterback, whether he's an MVP, whether he sucks? Because those conversations are very different from the conversation that I feel 90% of football fans believe, which he's fine. He's
Yeah.
playing well. The offense is good. But everyone is kind of living in the extremes to make whatever point, they want to make. Like, I don't think most real people think he is either trash or that he is on the same level as the Mahomes.
We're having surgical conversations, but we're using meat cleavers, is what it feels like. It's like the conversations that we're having require a very high level of concentration on the words that you choose in order to not be disrespectful, but that's not how, or to be not be wrong. And it requires the people who respond to listen closely and accept it, but they don't because they hear like Brock Purdy is not. And then whatever you say after that doesn't matter because you said Brock
Yeah.
Purdy is not. And I need you to listen to exactly what is being said. But also, I understand, why are we saying what he isn't? He's winning, he's doing well. But when you start talking about the games that we saw this weekend or the games throughout the playoffs right now, yeah, Brock Purdy ain't them. And that seems like an honest, fair thing to say.
But why is
But
that hate? That's not hate. Saying someone's not one of the
yeah,
3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL isn't hate. It's an honest appraisal of the product
because
on the
I
football
think
field.
this is the meat cleaver point, is because I
Yeah.
think rather than people saying that, they're saying something to the effect, like Ryan Clark's, for example. RC said, um, essentially that, like, I don't remember verbatim, but it brought the MVP, and it was like,
Yeah,
I'm glad we don't have to pretend that he's a MVP anymore.
right.
And it's like, okay, I get the point that you're making because yes, he is nowhere near as valuable to them as Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen is. But had they beat the Ravens and they went on
Yeah.
and he's number one in every category, it would have been absurd to not give him the MVP. So when I'm a 49ers fan or a Purdy fan, I hear that and I'm like, there were 3 interceptions, 2 of which were kind of fluky. And like, other than that, now you saying my guy ain't an MVP, and it was like a joke, and it was annoying for you to have to deal with us say it. So like, I get it, but you just gotta listen carefully, and you also gotta be careful with your words, or you just don't get on Twitter like me and say what you want.
Well, I think also s- sports debate, so much of it is just trying to put players in a vacuum. Like
Yeah.
so much of and again, I'm on these shows, so much of the topics are like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And the
Trust
problem is
score.
there's literally no more interconnected sport
Right.
than football. So it's already a fool's errand, which is why, I famously, wow, that's self-aggrandizing. I don't like quarterback wins as a stat.
Nah, it's
So
famous.
you're already doing something kind of difficult and challenging. And like, look, it's not, I want to be clear, like, it's supposed to be fun, right? Like, when we argue about who the best quarterback in football is or whatever, it shouldn't be toxic. It should be fun. It should just be like, whatever, we're doing a thought experiment because these guys don't play in a vacuum. I think where it becomes actually relevant is when it comes contract time. And this is something the Niners, like, all this stuff doesn't matter now. It will matter when they're deciding whether to give the quarterback, by then, like $70 zillion a year, whatever.
Mhm.
But at the moment, what matters and what matters for this show is context. And all I have to say about this game is if the context is not raining, it probably doesn't matter. So, okay, Packers side of it. This was actually hard for me to pick a Woof because I just think this Packer season was so amazing and the future looks so bright. So I actually went with just Packers fans because y'all should have won that game. That
Yeah.
sucks.
That's
I mean, the missed field goal, the dropped interceptions, the red zone lack of success, all of it just felt fluky and bad. I have no criticism of this offense. And ultimately it was the red zone stuff. You can break down the individual plays. And then you had uh totally like, Jordan Love just like
mm,
unfortunately having like a really bad, few drives that
yeah.
are very different from how he was the second half of the season. I think the one question I have, and this is something I do want to extend to you, Domonique, is and this is also kind of falls under the Packers fan, I guess, category. Feels like they're going to keep their defensive coordinator. I was listening to Matt LaFleur talk about it. Joe Barry, this is a defense that was very bad, very underperforming for most of the year, is only about a month removed from letting Bryce Young and Tommy DeVito
Mm.
kill them. Then went on kind of a rip at the end, but is that fluky or whatnot? I guess that is, I think if there's like one kind of like, ooh, coming out of this, like, I don't know how you feel about that as a Packers fan, given how bad they were for most of the season.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what your options are to come out of it, but it feels like almost any option is better than what you've been receiving. This does have like some Steelers vibes to it, where it's like you've seen this movie a number of times. There's really no reason to come back and try it again. I guess the only
Yeah.
reason is you can point to that Dallas game and some other late season games, but that doesn't
Nick
feel,
Mullins
yeah,
and Justin Fields the final
right.
week.
It doesn't feel like enough to me, but, I think there's something to be said for continuity, but you can't be much, like, worse than what they were, so I hate it, but it's what they gotta
28th
do, I
in
guess.
weighted DVOA, 30th in success rate. I don't know. I agree with you. It feels like the Steelers thing, and also just given how well the offense played and how talented the young talent. I think that's what sucks. Is just not getting more out of your young talent has been a consistent problem on that side of the ball. Um, the Dallas game is the one where I was like, okay, the defense is actually playing really well. This last one, the rain again. I don't want to take. I mean, they did some good things, especially up front, but Purdy was also just missing dudes. Like I don't. I wouldn't. I don't know. personally, I would move on, but
Yeah.
I don't think they will, based on the way Matt LaFleur is talking about it. All right, let's end with the Texans and the Ravens. So hard to pick a winner from the Ravens. So many awesome things in this game. I feel like the defensive performance is kind of getting lost in all of this.
Not with me and you. Not in our text conversations.
Those big guys out front.
Huh.
The DT play and that's not you like DT play. But I'm gonna go with the offense, and I went with I kind of want to do the entire Ravens offseason, because every decision they made, from
Mhm.
paying Lamar to the hiring of Todd Monken to the receivers they added, was completely justified in this game. In fact, it was, I thought, an excellent showcase for what makes this Ravens team different from the last 4 years, certainly from the 2019. And you and I, we were worried, Domonique. We were worried at halftime. We were texting. We were like, this is the takes are going to be flying. This is, and then it was, for me, that first drive coming out of the half when Lamar just started getting rid of the ball so quickly versus, so I'm sorry, to recap, D'Amico Ryans was blitzing the hell out of him. Smart, I thought, in the first half, and it was working, and they were very ineffective against it. Second half, again, comes out blitzing. You saw so many of the things I mentioned on display. You saw a quarterback who was in complete control of the offense, and apparently at halftime was like, like, we got to do this, this, and this, the protections, whatever. They, was very involved in the adjustments. And then you saw those adjustments. And I think what was striking, I went back and watched that drive in particular, and the throws against the blitz, was the spacing of the wide receivers. The fact that, like, on every single one of them, if you watch all the wide receivers, everything was so well executed, intelligent. The way, like, I think it was the very first throw where you got Isaiah Likely kind of coming in motion across the middle of the field, creating the throwing lane so he can hit Aguilar. And when that happened, I was like, oh, okay, like, this is a plan I see. And I mentioned the spacing in particular, and then you saw, again, multiple examples very similar where you can point to different wide receivers, the way they're creating space. This was such a problem with the Ravens offense for years. You would see guys, literally, some of the spacing made no sense. You see guys running into the same space. There was no strategy behind it. So to see them in that drive come out with such a well-tailored and executed plan to deal with pressure, to get Lamar Hotz, to get those guides yards after the catch, just so satisfying.
Chef's kiss.
Satisfying.
So the thing I would start with is, and I don't want to be negative given how dominant they were in this performance. However, what took you so long?
Yeah, man. Okay.
Because
yeah, it was not great.
the Lamar Jackson, the best kryptonite that we've seen for Lamar is to blitz him. And I know the Texans don't blitz much, so it is fine for you to come in not anticipating that as a strategy. However, you know what people do against you. That should be the thing that you are most prepared for. Why it took them to a halftime is why I will offer another winner, which is that damn defense. I know you wanted to give it to them,
No. Let's do
but
it.
this goes back to context for games and support for your quarterbacks. Is that defense bought them all the time they needed to figure this out for them to go into halftime and Lamar to get things straight. Now, you're absolutely right. When they came out and Lamar was dicing them up, yeah, but you also could have been down 24-7 at that point if your defense isn't balling the way that they are. So do that faster. Don't y'all got what you surprised? And yeah, I other than that, it was perfect. They were outstanding on offense and defense. And I saw Marcus Spears said on NFL Live a good point that I think is getting lost in all of this is that the Ravens still have their identity of being physical, tough team, even though their offense has evolved. Like, this is the blueprint that the Eagles need to follow in this offseason is evolve your offense, but maintain that you're a physical, tough team.
Yeah.
And it was like stages of this. They've
Yeah.
spent this time developing this one style of play, one style of offense. Then they added another couple levels with extra players. And I think the point that I made before these playoffs started, the reason why I said I thought that it would be different this year with the Ravens, and maybe it's premature to take a victory lap, was that in the previous incarnations of the Ravens, they had really impressive and explosive offenses and defenses, but they did not have other counterpunches. Like their defense was man coverage, we gonna blitz you. If y'all
Yeah.
got an answer for that, we don't got no answer for that. And their other offense was like the Lamar Jackson, like variation of a running attack with a little bit of drop back. Y'all got an answer for that? We don't got no answer for that. And it seems like in this game, they demonstrated against an inferior opponent that they do have. Just get to them quick. Just get to them
Yeah.
quicker.
Yeah, I know. About the run game too, it was like, okay, okay, you're being the blitz. You go up, and then once you're up, you can just grind them into dust, which is
Yeah.
what they did. One more shout
Running
out.
off the ball.
I feel like I sometimes joke about him in terms of as a pass catcher. Patrick Ricard is such a good football player, man. Like, I mean,
Look at you.
dude, he blocks his off, and he blocks real edge rushers, like
Yeah.
stands them up. So nothing but respect for 42, who is sort of the continuity between all of these teams.
And it's a versatility that doesn't get celebrated in the way that like a Devo or Christian's
Yeah.
versatility gets celebrated. A guy that is capable of being a functional receiver and also a functional tackle with in the same offense, like that gives you a level of flexibility that like he's not a great receiver, but he can run a route and catch a ball, and he's not like starting level tackle, but you put him in those situations, he can play guard. It's a
He
nice
was
little piece
trying
to
he
have.
tried out for
Yeah,
guard. You
I
remember? Yeah,
remember.
right.
I
Yeah, right.
remember.
Project
Yep.
Pat. All right. Finally, the
You
Texans, we're
wait
ending
for
here. Your Woof.
yeah,
Again, this is
my
a
wolf.
little bit of Packersy where it's like, hey,
Yeah.
you're a Texans fan, you're, the LeBron smiling under the sun meme after this season. But what is your Woof?
Young Bobby Slowik. He's doing all these head coaching Zooms, and he ain't had nothing, man. He tried it all, and
When
he
the
had
when the
nothing,
when the
man.
double fake screen tight end
Oh,
release didn't work, I was like,
oh,
oh, it's over. It's
it
over.
is
You're
over.
getting
And
put through the
then
Mike McDonald
uh,
meat grinder, baby.
yeah,
Like,
and then the reverse flea
they almost
flicker to
had
a
that. They
screen
almost
pass,
had
except was it Stone just hanging
Stone.
on the
Stone
ankle,
just went
baby,
right. The
hanging on
Ravens
the ankle.
defense is anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
but you're
This is a wolf, but it's really just another winner for the Ravens defense.
yeah,
And I texted this to
you're
you,
awesome.
so you won't be surprised by this. Is what's the most exciting thing about watching that defense is that they are a fast, physical, aggressive defense. And lots of defenses are like that. But you know how you beat those defenses? With misdirection and screens and throwbacks and double reverse flea flickers. Like you get these aggressive defenses that way. They tried all that
Yeah.
and this defense is also incredibly smart and disciplined, right down to watching the depth of the underneath droppers. Is they caught one dig. Then the next time they ran the dig, I saw Patrick Queen go in front up that dig. Like, what the hell are you doing? This is not fair. And you watch
Yeah.
CJ Stroud drop back, and he's like, all right, I recognize this coverage. This is cover 3. Let me find this dig, or let me read Roquan. Okay, Roquan's sitting low. Let me find this dig. Oh, Patrick Queen left the backside of the field and just run into my dig. What am I do now? You roll out and throw it out of bounds is what you're going to do.
There's so many plays that were what you described is what happened, where the Ravens would basically take away the in-breaking concept
Yep.
in a way that the Texans didn't run into because that's what they feasted on this year.
Right.
I think the problem for them, and I think this is where they need to get better this offseason, is so like all of these Shanahan tree offenses, the Packers, the Lions, the Dolphins, the Niners, the Rams do that, but then they also have really good run games. Texans run game was trash.
Yeah.
And you can't against the Ravens defense. I mean, even with the run game, like we saw what happened to the Niners, you're still up against it, but you certainly have no chance if you can't run the football on this team. So I think for the offseason, it really is all about blocking, not just the offensive line. Something like, I think a real theme in the playoffs is these teams that have skill players who can block, man. Like that matters. I was thinking about watching the Lions, the Packers, the Niners, obviously, the Dolphins before they got bounced. So I think that's something that Houston really needs to stress this offseason is just blocking generally, so that regardless of whether they keep Slowik, because this is the right scheme for CJ Stroud, but you need to be able to run the football. You need guys who can block. You need to be able to threaten in both ways.
The last point I'll make about this, why young Bobby Slowik, his dad was my D coordinator for a couple years in Denver, but young Bobby, because I always want to say Bob Slowik because that was his dad. But anyway, young Bobby, baby Bobby. The last thing I'll say about why he gets this Woof is they had an EPA, an offensive EPA, expected points added, of -10 was their expected points added on their offense. So their offense cost them 10 expected points. For context, the worst offense in the league had -11, and it was the Jets. -11 per game was their average. They had them. The only team that they were better than was the Jets in a damn playoff game.
Did you see that stat that they didn't run a single play inside the Ravens 25-yard line, which this is from ESPN stats, which is the first time that's happened since the Rams-Patriots Super Bowl, the 13-3 game.
How many first downs did they get? Like 4 or 5?
We're really riding the roller coaster with all these coordinators in terms of coaching hires. Like 1 week ago, we were like, Bobby Slowik, the next Shanahan. This week, we're like, Bobby Slowik, he sucks. Neither is true, obviously.
Yeah.
I do like that he goes. I like that he's an adult who goes by Bobby, though. I always like it
because he's a junior.
He is a junior, but he could go by Bob Slowik Jr. He's carving out his own path. Bobby.
He could. Young Bobby. Bobby's
all right.
World. Remember that cartoon?
I do remember Bobby's World. I feel like it takes a certain confidence for adult men to go by like Jimmy or Timmy or Johnny or Bobby. Yeah.
Ricky or Mike.
All right, Domonique. Check out the Domonique Foxworth Show wherever you get your podcasts. You can check out me on there as well. You can watch this episode on YouTube. You do youtube.com/@MinaKimes. This was fun. I'm very excited for these championship games. I feel like we got some pretty good matchups, and we'll be back next week to recap them. Bye.
See ya, bud.